What is going on? We are back with another commentary. We are going to be playing a 14 Algethar Academy this time around. Again, it's bolstering entangling week, and I want to walk through basically everything that went right and what went wrong this run, and just talk about just like general cooldown usage, mindset throughout the run, etc., etc. So let's dive into this one. So starting the dungeon, if you don't know, Algethar Academy has a couple of different buffs that you can pick up. You can only have one. I'm going to actually opt in for the crit buff for this run specifically because I'm running the verse file of tepid verse file. And we are going to prepare ourselves by moving up towards the tree boss area, also known as the Overgrown Ancient. We're letting the Skitterflies patrol past a little bit here, and then I'm going to be heading in. The idea here is we're going to go for a very big pull with Lust, and I want to be able to group up everything at the same exact time. So I send a chi wave off to the left group, and then I roll and I keg smash the right group with the Skitterflies. We pop Shock and Disclosure, we make sure that we have our statue down, and we're going to be essentially, early on in this pull, we're going to be pretty tanky. The idea is that I'm going to pop Dampen Harm to get my first Celestial Brew rolling and getting good Purified Chi stacks, and then hopefully once I have, 10 stacks, I'm going to be popping that here. And then at some point in the pull, I will probably opt for a Black Ox Brew. I'm trying to hold on to Nizao and Fort Brew, but Fort Brew just got popped. This is a scary pull, especially once the Skitterflies start getting bolstered and or enraged. And the combination of them gets pretty rough. I drop a Ring of Peace for our group just in case to maybe stop some of the Skitterfly jumps, but it's not going to matter because the ring will end before the next leap. We Black Ox Brew into a Celestial Brew again, and then we are pretty much vibing. Now, a bolstered Lasher like this is still pretty scary with their auto attack, so we do still want to be careful. Celestial Brew is going to be coming back up, and I'm going to be using it almost immediately because 4 stacks of bolstering is pretty dangerous. Once this Lasher starts going down, we're going to hit the Touch of Death, and we're going to roll into the next pull. Now, I want to pull the Lashers first to start getting early damage on this big old Lasher guy before the Skitterflies come in because of the health disparity between the targets. Obviously, I don't want the Skitterflies to bolster I don't want the Skitterflies to bolster the Vile Lasher as we just dealt with that, and I want to make sure that we can start role play for the boss spawning as fast as possible. We're going to pretty much Exploding Keg on cooldown, especially in these larger pulls, and now I'm pretty dry on defensive, so I'm going to be calling for Iron Bark from our Druid here in just a second, as my stagger is right now 200%, which is pretty scary. We are going to be getting Black Ox Brew up now, and I'm going to be waiting for my next Celestial Brew usage, but having 2 more Celestial Brews should stabilize me for the rest of the pull. And just like that, the pull's pretty much over. We're committing the Celestial Brew there, and again, I do have Black Ox Brew. If I feel like I need it, I'm going to end up using it here because I shouldn't really need it on the boss. I'm also going to send my Decoration of Flame because this will help finish up the pull, and I don't need it until later into the boss fight. Luckily, our Druid is doing a pretty good job at keeping these Skitterflies fairly soothed. I think one's still at 6 stacks, but luckily we were able to kill it before it did any kind of lethal damage. And now the Lasher is almost dead, and we're going to finish it off, and now we are ready to go. Our Druid now has a little bit of time to drink, and we just have kind of time to prepare for this boss fight. Now, it does take him about 20 seconds to spawn, so if you did have someone die, good time to grab a food buff, and we're going to get right in. So this fight's a little weird with Entangling because it can definitely throw a curveball at you when you're trying to run away from the Germinate cast. Luckily for us, we had a good spawn there based on the time that we pulled it. Bark Break is the major mechanic that we have to look out for here as a tank because it's going to cause us to take a lot of damage. Once these Germinates are happening, we're going to start moving to the left. Unfortunately, I got clipped there, which is going to spread them out a little bit, but not a big deal. Now, normally, if you're trying to go for big damage on Brewmaster, you're going to try to Exploding Keg here, but I want to make sure that I'm going to be able to hold threat on the second Germinate cast, so I'm going to be opting to basically hold my CDs. My damage is going to look pretty low at the start of this fight, but it will pick up later on. When it's just a branch out or just the Overgrown Ancient, the Bark Break debuff isn't super scary, but once we get further into the fight, when there's a ton of Lashers on me, that's when it becomes pretty brutal. I got hit again. I just wasn't playing this fight all that well. I drop Ring of Peace for our group. They can move in. I'm going to move into the center, drop my Exploding Keg, and that should give me plenty of threat, and my damage should start skyrocketing here shortly up into the 300k, and ideally, by the end of the fight, we'll be in like the 400k range. Now, something that I'm doing a little bit differently for this dungeon compared to the last couple commentaries I've done is I have made the swap to Weapons of Order and Dragonfire Brew. This is going to give me a little bit more burst damage, which is nice, and it's going to give me a little bit more damage inside of a cooldown window, which I haven't really been able to utilize. Charred Passions is really good for overall damage, but you lack the burst for some of these burstier classes, like Warrior, for example, or Devastation Evoker. This set, we're holding our CD. The main thing that I'm going to be using the next set is going to be Decoration of Flame. Decoration of Flame is really good for Snap Threat. It's a fairly okay trinket in terms of healing, but it's more split across the board, where it gives you a good bit of damage, good bit of healing, but it's not great at either one. It's okay at both. So Decoration is going to come out. I'm also going to Bone Dust Brew into an Exploding Keg, Spinning Crane Kick to maximize the damage on that, and we're going to be vibing. This next Bark Break that comes out, I'm going to want to make sure I'm utilizing a Celestial Brew there, and we should be pretty healthy. Luckily for me, we have 3 Poison Dispels in this group. Myself, the Druid, and our Evoker. So I should always be clear of stacks. If you're running without classes that can Poison Dispel, you do want to try to find a time to utilize the Global to dispel yourself with Detox, but I recommend doing it right after a Leg Sweep or right when you drop Ring of Peace. Anyways, pretty good. Most of our DPS were around the 800k mark. I ended at 450, so I was pretty happy with that, especially holding my Exploding Keg. It's very tempting to send all of your damage on the first set of adds, but if you do that, you might have issue picking up threat if you have very, very bursty classes like Demon Hunters, Ret Paladins, Windwalker Monks, etc. This mob is actually pretty terrifying if you're not careful. I'm going to stand in this Expel, but I shouldn't have. I didn't realize that the 14 was just going to clap me like that. But we're going to use Celestial Brew on cooldown to mitigate some of these storm slash casts. As you can see, I had a 6-stack Purified Chi there on my Celestial Brew, and I still took a ton of damage. It basically ate the entire shield. So we do want to respect this mob's Tank Buster. But I also need to be careful of the next couple pulls because the Eagles are pretty scary. So you can see here, this time I'm actually going to line of sight that ability here, and we're going to be vibing. Storm Slash comes out, and we're feeling pretty healthy. I'll have Resonator coming up in a second as well, which will give me a nice 50% DR as well as additional damage to finish off this mob, and we're also going to have Touch of Death if I feel like I need to use it here. Resonator procs, it's going to give us a good bit of damage. We're going to do one more line of sight tech here. I'm trying to get a little bit of additional damage, and now we're good to go. Touch of Death comes out. No, actually, no, didn't Touch of Death there. We executed with one of our caster's trinkets. All right, so next we have these Eagles. This actually pull is pretty scary. If these Peck stacks, it's a bleed. If these get too high and then they start getting bolstered, the tank will most likely perish. So you do want to be careful on your stacks here. You want to cleave down all of these Eagles at the same exact time. I'm going to be holding some of my other cooldowns for the next pack, like Weapons of Order, for example, though I did just send Exploding Keg here with Bone Dust Brew. As you can see, I have 6 stacks of bleed here. I have to do about 300k HPS. 7 stacks is pretty dangerous. I'm going to kite out the last couple ticks, and we should be good to go. Next pack flies down. I'm now opting to use Tiger Statue to get some additional damage, popping Celestial Brew early to mitigate some of the early auto attacks, and now I'm going to be committing the Weapons of Order, though I won't have Exploding Keg until the end of the pull. Wasn't the best use on damage optimization here, but I'm okay with that. Weapons of Order still provides a lot of damage for like Keg Smash, Spinning Crane Kick, Breath of Fire, etc. But not having the Exploding Keg will definitely make my damage a little bit lower here. I do have 4 stacks on this guy still. Weapons of Order is still rolling, so I could use Exploding Keg here on this mob to get big single target damage, but I'm going to be holding it for the next pack so I can get threat and get early amount of damage out. I do have to be a little careful here. Healing Threat will make the Eagles go towards our healer before they actually touch the ground. So healers just have to be careful here. Going to opt for the Bone Dust Brew into the Exploding Keg, into the Spinning Crane Kick. And the main thing we're looking out for here is just the frontals as well as the cast from the Alpha Eagles, the bigger ones. As long as we kick Call of the Flock, we should be pretty healthy. There's going to be less packs that are going to go onto us. They are avoidable via dodge and our Mastery Elusive Brawler, so these pulls aren't too scary. It's a lot of physical damage. If you do happen to have big bleeds, you can always opt to, kite away in Zen Med, or just commit Celestial Brews and you should be fine. When these mobs are bolstered, again, their auto attacks will chunk, so you do want to respect them. Frontals come out. If you are a range player, I do recommend standing near melee. It's a little bit easier to dodge a frontal cone when you're closer to the target compared to further away because there's less distance to travel. But at the end of the day, as long as you're paying attention to the frontals, they do target any character in your group. So any party member could be susceptible to being targeted by the frontal. So just be ready to dodge. And at this point, we're looking really good. We are just about to get Lust up. I think we send it here if I remember correctly. And yeah. I'm gonna dodge these flames. I was just checking out the panda model. Rocking the big panda. Okay, so here when Croth spawns, people need to be sure that they're not standing right next to him because Croth will immediately start combat and auto the closest player. So tanks, you want to move in close, but as a Brewmaster, we also want to make sure we have shuffle rolling. So if someone is standing too close, like our warrior, for example, warrior would have just been meleeed instantly and died. I've had that happen in plenty of runs where, you know, Pug DPS are just standing right next to the boss because they want to get early damage and they just die from it. On Fortified Weeks, this mob is, or I should say this boss is kind of a joke. The scariest part are the bleeds for the tank, but with consistent Celestial Brew usage, we should never actually have to worry about that. Now, moving throughout this entire fight, the Deafening Screech is kind of the thing that you're paying attention for. You can see on this screen, I have 2 stacks of the debuff. My group has 2 stacks of the debuff. This ramps up every time the ability goes out. So the idea is that you want to drop before it'll one-shot your group. At this level of key, ideally I would recommend 3. Some groups might try to eke out maybe a 4th stack if they can, if they have major defensives, if they have immunities, etc., etc. But for our group, because of our damage, we're actually going to opt to just drop at 3 stacks every single time. So you can bait this out a little bit. You could bait this out a little bit by holding on to the orb right before the Deafening Screech. You do want to throw it about 5 seconds before because it does take time to register the stun. I threw it at 8 seconds there. The stun came out when there's 3 seconds left on the Deafening Screech. So do give yourself a little bit of time. It's not an instant thing that happens. During the stun phase, we are going to start ramping our weapons of order. We go into our Exploding Keg Bone Dust window, and now we're looking really, really good in terms of like damage gain on the boss. Our Druid accidentally went bear form and taunted there, so I had to taunt back pretty quickly. Thank God she was not near the boss because it would have probably just knocked her down. So now that the boss is like sub 50, the second goal is spawned, so we're going to start throwing our orbs. Again, we're going to just play it safe here. We're clearly ahead on boss percent in terms of Deafening Screech stacks. So if you notice that you're ahead, we're still going to go to 3, but you don't need to try to go to 4. You don't need to milk it out. Boss is now sub 30%, so an execute range for our warrior and our fire mage. So we're looking really healthy. I am holding on to one last orb. I'm ready to throw it, but our fire mage is also standing there ready to throw it as well. Third Deafening Screech comes out. We used defensives like Frenzied Regen, what am I talking about? Enraged Regeneration. Barkskin came out on that last one, and now we're going to throw our last orb. The boss is sub 10% now. Now, something that I don't see a lot of people realize is that these little white orbs at the edge of the arena space make you immune to the pushback, and it gives you like 30% haste or something like that, so everyone should be picking it up. The amount of time, the uptime on the buff starts when the orbs spawn. So if you wait 10 seconds to pick it up, you only get 10 seconds of the haste buff. So when you're throwing in the last orb, you want your group to be spread out around the room ready to pick up those orbs almost immediately. Now at the very end of the fight here, I actually got targeted by that Savage Peck, and I do have the bleed for 5 more seconds, so I'm actually going to sit in Zen Med because the bleed is still ticking on me. I don't want to have to commit like a Celestial Brew or any kind of other cooldown, and I don't want my healer to have to sit there and spot heal me when they could be grabbing mana or something like that, because this next pull is going to be, the next couple of pulls are going to be pretty intense on the tank, especially with the Battle Axe being present. All right, so now we're going in. Now, normally I would actually do a very large pull here with Lust, but since we actually sent it on the bird, we're going to hold off and we're just going to do pretty much 1 pack at a time. You can get pretty aggressive here with the pulls, but I might have to talk about that in a different video. Because I actually ran this on a 13 where we did like a crazy aggressive pull, but in this case, I'm just going to keep it simple. The major thing we're watching out here for is that vicious lunge from these foragers. They don't do a ton of damage, but if you pull enough of them, they can end up one-shotting. Mana Void will drain your healer's mana, and Surge just does a little bit of damage to a random target. So you want to keep a lot of this stuff locked down if you can, kick what you can. The main thing that the tank is looking out for, though, is the Battle Axe bleed. It is dodgeable, but if it happens to connect with you, it will pretty much kill the tank. At least it'll kill a Brewmaster at this difficulty. Or I'm just bad. And you're going to get to see that in you're going to get to see that here in a second. This battle axe is actually going to end up defeating me. The main thing you're doing here, ooh, good meld, is you're having range actually try to LOS the Ravager. This dungeon on Bolstering Week actually isn't bad at all, because the big evil mob in this dungeon is going to be the Ravager if it gets bolstered. But if we're able to line of sight the Vicious Ambush, it's as simple as, well, it won't ever leap, and it's only going to stand here and do a frontal breath at the tank, which you can avoid. The other thing that we need to watch out for is that Mystic Blast from the Scepter. I got a paralysis on it there to stop the cast. This bleed is going to go off, and because I wasn't really ready, I'm going to end up actually going down here to this bleed. That bleed does a ton of damage. You need to commit a cooldown to it. I could have probably popped Fort Brew. I could have went Celestial Brew into a Black Ox Brew, back into another Celestial Brew. I'm trying to get threat back. Luckily for us, we were able to just invis that leap there. And then we're going to try to just finish this off. I'm going to pull the Ravager back so our range can continue line of sighting. But yeah, just you have to respect those battle axes. If they do happen to land a blow, you're probably just going to you're going to get killed. With this going down, we are now heading into this next pull. Now, I do this pull in a kind of an interesting way, at least I think it is. So I'm going to continue running past, and I'm going to pull in 2 Foragers, mostly because I want a little bit more just general damage. It's not super useful to do 4 targets. It's not the way that the mobs are positioned up near the Veximus area are just kind of awkward. So I like to pull in these 2 Foragers, and this is going to allow us to actually do something a little bit more optimized for time in this run. Kind of same thing here. Mana Fiends aren't very dangerous. You do want to make sure you're kicking Surge Cast. The magic or the Mystic Blast there from the Scepter needs to be stopped. We got a knockback there, but anything from Leg Sweep, Paralysis, Ring of Peace, any kind of displacement or CC can prevent the cast. And now, because the Foragers are getting a little bolstered, we do need to be careful on these lunges. If they happen to target the same player when they're bolstered, it could lead to a one-shot or put the player in kind of a dangerous situation. Severing Slash, I'm going to just, well, I dodged it there, but you can outrange it. And now we're going to be able to skip into Veximus's area without having to pull the Ravagers. And this is going to allow us to actually start the boss RP first and then clear trash while we're waiting, which is just more efficient for time. This pull is going to be pretty aggressive, and the reason why is because we have CDs. We have both our Evoker CD and our Mage CD, and Warriors just kind of zug anyways. In this pull specifically, there are 2 battle axes, so I need to be very, very careful and respect those casts of the Severing Slash. The main thing we're looking out for is the Monotonous Lecture, or Monotonous Lecture, however you want to say it, and making sure that it's not putting anyone important to sleep. And when I say that, it's mostly like you want to make sure your DPS... Actually, no one should get slept here because you want to make sure you're kicking as many casts as possible. I put down the Ring of Peace there to make sure I create a little bit of distance while I wait for some of my cooldowns to roll back up. I did just get Black Ox Brew again. I'm going to commit it here and prepare a Celestial Brew. I see that there's a bleed on me. I'm going to commit the Celestial Brew almost immediately. And now we're just kind of praying that our healer can keep us up. 400k HPS should be enough to keep myself alive. Now that things are starting to get bolstered, especially one of those battle axes, my group is keeping these mobs away. Severing Slash is coming out. I do a paralysis on it to prevent the cast, and now we are going into this tiny little 5-target pull to finish it off. There isn't a battle axe in this pull, which is convenient, but there is a Mystic Blast that goes off there. We were actually out of CC. I did have Leg Sweep, but I wanted to save it for a setup that you'll actually see in a couple seconds, where it's like a combination of Mystic Blast and double Lecture, which I think is a little bit more important to stop. And we're just going to commit, again, we're going to commit the Combust to the pull and just kind of zug this pack down. This one's going to be a little bit less stressful. We wait for the double Lecture and the Scepter Blast, or the Mystic Blast, I should say, on the Scepter, and we're going to Leg Sweep. Now things are starting to get bolstered. We're going to start, using knockbacks and using kind of group CC to keep everything under control. And you can see that one surge there almost killed our Evoker. So we definitely want to be careful on these casts. All right, so boss RP typically takes about 20 seconds. So during this time, I mean, obviously the pull is going to take longer than 20 seconds. We're going to do this Ravager and Forager pack. And our range are going to be able to actually CC, or not CC, they're going to be able to line of sight the Ravager, meaning that we don't have to worry about it getting bolstered. Now, unfortunately, our healer was trying to get mana here to before the boss fight. So the Ravager actually ended up attacking our Resto Druid. Luckily, then now everyone has moved into melee at this point, so our mage is going to be able to either invis or line of sight the next couple of charges. And because of the health disparity between the Ravager and the Foragers will go down way, way, way faster than the Ravager, but luckily we do have a little bit of single target priority with the Fire Mage's Combust. So the Ravager's still at about 40% health. All the other mobs are starting to die now. So it's now super important that we line of sight this Ravager cast. The ambush will always go on the furthest player, whether it's a melee or a range. So if a range player can stand out further than the rest of the group, it'll always go on the mage. Now, I can't remember if he ends up moving in here, so it ends up going on our, I think, Evoker here. Luckily for us, the bolstering has worn off at this point, but that was a one bolstered charge. If it had any more stacks, our Evoker would have surely died there. All right, Veximus can slap, but I think we're going to be good. I also just voice cracked, so my apologies. So I like to pull Veximus off to, you know, kind of the, not the edge of the room, but not, I don't want to keep him in the center, because I want some orbs to come in slower than others. Now, I missed the roll there. That was close. I'm not going to commit any cooldowns here because I have Resonator rolling. The idea for every set is I want to soak at least 2 orbs, and if I can, I want to soak 3, and then my healer will dispel me. Most DPS can get away with soaking 1, maybe 2 with a defensive, but they want to save their defensives for the mana bombs that come out, because the mana bombs are very threatening to the DPS. The tank's big threat is the arcane expulsion here, this giant frontal. Aim it towards the edge of the room. You should have Celestial Brew for every single one if you're playing everything right. If you happen to not because you're trying to soak, or maybe you're running a different build and you're not playing light brewing, you can always commit something just like Dampen Harm. You can commit a Black Ox Brew, you can commit Fort Brew, and you should be healthy. So here I'm going to try to get as many orbs as I can. I only got 2 there. I was trying to get 3, but one of our DPS was able to eat 1. We have a pretty tanky comp. Warrior's generally pretty tanky. Mage is pretty good. And Evoker with Obsidian Scales can be tanky as well. And this fight's as simple as a rinse and repeat. So every time a set of orbs is going to come out, as long as it's not overlapping with the frontal, I'm going to start chasing down these orbs. And I'm going to be soaking this third one as well. Possibly. Nope, our mage was able to get it. And I'm going to break this entangling. Making sure that I'm always facing this arcane expulsion towards the outside of the room or the nearest bookshelf is going to help my group understand that they should never get hit. They should always have room and never have to worry about a stray frontal cleaving them. All right, so we go 2 stacks here, and then my healer dispels me. If you are happening to play Diffuse Magic, you can always use Diffuse Magic as a way to dispel or a way to mitigate damage. But in this case, I'm not playing Diffuse, I'm just running Eulons. I don't think this dungeon requires Diffuse Magic. This is the only boss where it'd be useful on. I guess you can argue that it's good on Dorogosa too, but I find that you generally get more mitigation or more healing out of Eulon. Yeah, and this fight is very simple, rinse and repeat. I think the scariest overlap is the 3rd set of mana bombs, because it also overlaps with an Arcane Fissure. The Arcane Fissure is a lot of group damage, and it requires you to dodge swirls, which can just be, you know, it's always a cause for concern when there's a lot of moving parts into a specific part of an encounter. Holy cow, that was a hard sentence to say. Next pull, we're going to double up. We need to be careful of battle axes. There will be 2 of them, but as long as we're rotating through our defenses, we should be good. Ring of Peace on the Mystic Blast from the Scepter, and now everything is nice and grouped. Battle axe slashes are coming out, and I'm going to just essentially, I'm going to basically be keeping an eye on my debuffs. So if I have a slash on me and I don't happen to dodge it, I'm going to pop a defensive. Once things start to die and those battle axes are bolstered, I definitely want to start kiting. Dampen Harm comes out for some of these autos. Things are starting to get lower, so I know bolstering is going to sneak up on me here. I commit a Celestial Brew. I have Resonator in 15 seconds if I need it. I also have Black Ox Brew that I do commit. I'm going to start purifying my chi here, and now I'm back to a 10-stack Celestial Brew, which I commit immediately. I get a leg sweep, and now that things are bolstered and there's a battle axe left, I just start kiting. Not even going to risk it. And now we have 90 minutes left going up to the last boss. We're at 83% trash. 2 pulls left of the dungeon. The next pull is going to be very, very easy for our group because we can abuse the Z-axis on some of these whirlwinds. So this pull could be bigger. Honestly, it actually could be a lot bigger, but we're going to split it into 2 pulls. I'm going to pull these 2 Echo Knights to the top of the stairs, and I'm going to pull the pack that's at the top towards the, top of the stairs going down. We're going to get a kick on the Invoker. I'm going to Ring of Peace the mobs to the top of the stairs, and now we're slowly going to start making our way down the stairs. Holy crap, I keep saying stairs. That's annoying me. So how this works is basically the range can stand off to the side. You can see our fire mage right behind my timeline there. Our resto druid should be at the top as well, but it's not a big deal. And we're going to slowly just move our way down the stairs every time a whirlwind comes out. As long as my melee are standing on me or behind me, they should never get hit by the whirlwinds. And this is because of how the Z-axis works in this game. The way that the mobs are coded is that their Z-axis is like equal to their character center of gravity or whatever you want to call it. Now I'm going to start moving the mobs back up the stairs just to kind of reset them. And our melee can now stand in melee range and not have to worry about taking any damage. You can see here in the bottom right hand corner, my healing is high because of auto attacks, and I do get hit by a couple of whirlwinds, but generally speaking, our healer doesn't have to do almost any healing at all. Once they're bolstered, they're obviously super scary, and now we're going to finish up by running into the final boss room. The patrol's in a bad spot. Basically, depending on the patrol route, I might pull patrol instead, but because the patrol was kind of in a weird spot and a little bit further out, I decided to pull the pack that was on that like little grassy knoll. We're going to use Ring of Peace to push mobs in the corner. I'm going to try to get a kick on that Invoker. I do end up missing the kick though. And we're trying to keep everything in this corner. The only person who should be in danger of this pull will be our warrior as well as myself, especially once mobs gets bolstered. Entangling comes out, though I want to be careful. I don't want to have to move too much, so I use Tiger's Lust on myself to remove that. Kicking Arcane Missiles where we can, and these bombs should be ran into melee. Whenever an Astral Bomb comes out, it does do a little bit of damage to the mob, so you actually want to overlap it onto their hitboxes. Now, unfortunately, I don't respect the bolstering here. I think I end up going down again. So I'm the only person who I think ends up dying in this dungeon. Yeah, right here, the whirlwind comes out, and I think I move in to try to break my entangling, and the 6-stack bolstered Echo Knight ends up just killing me, and as soon as I go down, the auto attack kills our warrior. I'm going to ignore the battle res because we were able to finish it off, and we're just going to wait for a full res. We're going to be going to the boss into Dorogosa with about 5 minutes left. But up to this point, very clean run. A couple of deaths, not too many though. Now, Dorogosa, they made her harder, but they also made her easier, so she instantly will spawn 2 pools on the ground that will send out orbs. I like to pull Dorogosa back to a corner, ideally one of the 2 statues, and what this allows is our range are able to put themselves in a position where they are far away, so they have plenty of time to dodge, and they can also see the orbs coming at them. Once I get the boss towards a statue here, I'm then able to kind of rotate myself in a second to be able to actually see these incoming orbs. I just got hit there. I'd like to say that's on purpose because when you do get these stacks of overwhelming power, you actually gain a damage boost, a 5% damage gain. Just gotta watch the frontal. Our warrior does not, so he goes down almost immediately. Warrior Zug. And the rest of the fight it's pretty much rinse and repeat. We're gonna get gripped in every once in a while from the power vacuum. We're gonna roll out and just, yeah, continue going. I do commit Weapons of Order here. I'm going to start gaining stacks pretty quickly. I'm now up to 3. We're about to hit 4, and then we'll go into an Exploding Keg window. So we're going to get the bonus brew coming out here in a second once I get all my different abilities rolling. Or I'm not going to commit it at all. There we go. Here we go. Exploding Keg comes out. Spinning Crane Kick into a Chi Wave, I believe. I don't even know my own gameplay. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm saying all the incorrect things right now. So we do unfortunately drop a close pool kind of in the center of the room, which is not super great. So I do commit to this position, and later on in the fight, after 2 minutes, these pools disappear. So right now we're at about a minute 30 into the fight. This power vacuum will come out after this frontal, and then with only 20 seconds left, I'm going to position the boss ideally in the center of the room. So you're going to see me here. I'm going to roll center. I do still need to watch orbs. But once the 2-minute mark hits, these orbs will disappear. So about 10 more seconds or so. So this is the last set of orbs that we have to die. Now, unfortunately, someone dropped a pool right in the center. It's not going to be the end of the world. And these will disappear now. Ideally, you place these pools towards the edge of the room. You'll always drop one once you hit 4 stacks. There's random energy that will hit you throughout the fight. That'll put you at a stack. You also get targeted by the bomb, which will give you a stack, and getting hit by any orb will also give you a stack. So he dropped one kind of right there. So I'm going to actually end up pulling the boss a little bit further after the next power vacuum. And that's pretty much it. It's just simple as rinse and repeat. We're dodging the frontal. And yeah, I mean, there's nothing really to talk about now at this point. Fight's about 3 minutes long on Fort Week. We did have a death. I probably could have done better single target damage by a little bit. But yeah, I'm very proud of this run. This is actually a run that was able to allow me to get to 3 KIO this week in week 2. So I was very, very happy with our run. Anyways, that's pretty much it. I hope that helps. I hope that clarifies where I use some of my defensives, certain things to look out for. If you have any questions, of course, let me know down in the comments below. Playing Weapons of Order in this run, as well as Dragonfire Brew, has allowed me to get a little bit more damage, especially burst damage, to counter the the burst from both Warrior as well as our Dragon. But feeling really good. So anyways, thanks for watching. I hope you guys learned something from this, and I will catch you all very soon. Peace.